You want to say something on your mic?
Something on my mic.
See, it's already been fun. It's fun already. So, hello, professionals. My name is Rico Aladdin, and I am the founder of Professional Lunch. Today, we have the Director of Strategic Partnerships of UND here, University of North Dakota. Cortnee Jensen is in the studio for a professional lunch. Welcome, Cortney.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Please introduce yourself for the professional lunch audience.
Sure. So, as you said, I'm Cortnee Jensen. I'm the Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships for the University of North Dakota, which means that my job is to figure out who we should know, why we should know them, and how we can best serve those individuals, those entities, those governments, those industries as their partners. And how do we best learn what their needs are?
Wonderful, wonderful. So your job is to help find partnerships, yes? Right. So I can agree that Courtney is a professional that all young professionals should know because of how much how many relationships that she has. So that's I can second that. So walk me through the journey that led you to where you are today.
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I was thinking about this on my drive over here, and I would say that my journey is exceptional and very much like everyone else's journey. I did not say this is what I want to be when I grow up and follow a roadmap. I started off, decided I was curious about the world, was really attracted to science, ended up doing my undergraduate degree in biology, really thinking I was either going to go into medicine or research. Got into research, got into that lab, and realized I wanted to talk to people, not work on problem sets in a laboratory or in technology. I was still very interested in that. So then I moved to being a communicator in those tech fields, in those science fields, and then realized I wanted more than that. I wanted to make and feel the impact myself, not stand on a stage to make that impact, but really one-on-one, and went into the nonprofit world. The nonprofit world was a wonderful place to go because in the nonprofit world, I found people who were excited to make change, and they were excited to hear my ideas, even though I was young. They were excited to get to know me and to spend time with me, and they were willing to give me opportunities that I wasn't quote unquote trained for, because nonprofits don't have, as you may know, a lot of extra funds, right? And so when someone comes in and says, I think I can help you do that, there's a little bit more willingness to let younger people get involved. So I spent a lot of time in the nonprofit world, ended up in communications and then fundraising, and then really realized that my space in the world was wanting to be in relationship with people. And from there, I decided that instead of focusing on a goal, I was going to just focus on people. That no matter what job I did, who hired me, that I really wanted to spend time knowing people, understanding what makes them work, what makes them tick, but then also understanding what their needs are and thinking back as I go through my days, oh, hey, Rico and I were just talking about a need for technology the other day. I should introduce him to this person, trying to remove myself, my own needs out of it, and just think about people. And so when I made that change in my life, it made me very happy. And it meant that I could go work a number of places and be really happy and satisfied. And so that's kind of that journey for me, was that discovery of wanting to work with people, wanting to work with relationships, and then learning that it doesn't have to be work-centric. It can just be something that I do in my everyday life.
Wonderful. You said something here that I greatly appreciate is the fact that regardless of the business that you are in, working with people, you're going to need to know how to work with people, right? And so think of it, whether it's your non-profit, for-profit, non-profit even, it's even more critical than for-profit, because you need those relationships to be able to do what you do and to be able to fulfill your mission and also to fundraise. As you know, Professional Lunch is a non-profit organization, and actually we are part of Giving Hearts Day this year, and we are in the process of changing the name from Professional Lunch to professional launch, which is a tongue twister there. You're going to help me with that.
Professional launch is an excellent name.
Yes. So going to back to what you were saying, it's really important to know how to build those relationships to be able to, do what you have to do. So now you work in nonprofits. What was your first experience? Was it in volunteering? Did you take a volunteering position, or did somebody contact you to just say, "Oh, Cortnee, I have this position here. I think you can be good at it." So how did you start in nonprofit?
Well, so I am a little bit older than you are. I'm sure you've caught on to that by now. And the time frame that I graduated college and started my professional life, the ability to connect online and find opportunities wasn't the same. And so in some ways, I think that young people coming up now have it easier, but also I think they have it harder. There's so many opportunities that sometimes it's overwhelming to know where to start. But at the time I came up and realized that long-term, the research space wasn't where I was planning to stay. It was kind of one of those moments of how do you pivot? How do you figure out what it is you want to be when you grow up, when you've theoretically already grown up? You've been to college, you've started your first job, right? And so what I did is I actually did AmeriCorps, which is a national volunteer organization where you give a year of your life and you get paid a stipend. It's not a lot of money to go and work in high need areas. And so I joined AmeriCorps with the idea that I was going to give a year and spend a year getting to know myself and what I found value in. And AmeriCorps is great because you have a site that you select and they select you, and that's your main site, and you go and work it almost like a job. But then once a week they take you and they let you experience different things, and you do group projects and you go other places and your hands in all kinds of places. So it really gave me an opportunity to try a lot of different things. I found that during that time, that's when I really realized that my space was communications, and my space was wanting to help people, not to sell them something, but to help them to solve problems. And so the nonprofit world made sense to me. And so coming out of AmeriCorps, having been a year of volunteer, it was pretty easy to go to almost any nonprofit and say, hey, what jobs do you have available? So I took a job, did a part-time job as a volunteer coordinator for pay, and then volunteered a lot of my time outside of that for the same organization. It was with the Salvation Army. Salvation Army will always have a very dear place in my heart, and really got the opportunity to try some different things. As the volunteer coordinator, I had to go and learn about the organization and all the different things that were happening, and it was wonderful. And I very quickly moved up in that organization and was able to take over marketing and public relations. And then before long, I was doing the development and the fundraising. And so that was all within one organization. And then I had a really interesting detour because doing all of the public relations, I would have to go on radio stations and give updates and talk about the organization and what we were doing and why. And I got asked to fill in on a morning show. And so I went in and I filled in on a morning show for a couple of days, talked to my boss. He said, yeah, go ahead. And the radio station contacted me and said, we would like you to consider a job as a morning show personality.
Wonderful.
And it was one of those things where it was kind of serendipity. I can't tell someone, here's my advice as to how to get into this position, and I wish I could. But I got to be a morning show host. And during that time, I got to meet a lot of people. We interviewed a lot of people. I really got to know my community. And even more than my time in the nonprofit with Salvation Army, I found that connectivity to your community, those taking an interest in the things that's going on around you, knowing about who's coming, who's going, taking the time to welcome people when they're new, really fulfilled me and also made my experience in my own community so much better. And so I really kind of grew that desire to know and engage in my community. And that really changed me as I moved forward. And so the start was in that AmeriCorps space, but then really kind of through that nonprofit lens and moving my way into my community.
Wow, wonderful. So, in other words, one thing I can do is encourage young professionals to find opportunities to volunteer, because when you volunteer, you get to learn a lot and also make a lot of connections. So that's one of the things that I get from your story right there.
Absolutely. Lots of volunteer hours. I was a mentor. I was a big sister in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. I was on several boards. I helped start a professional AIDS network in Rochester, Minnesota, where I was working. I helped start a diversity council because we saw a need for diversity and education around diversity. And so basically, I took a couple of years before I had kids, and I kind of had the attitude of, whatever someone puts in front of me, I will seriously consider it. You can't do that for your whole life, your whole professional life. You can't say yes to everything.
Yes.
But I kind of had a yes here, and was able to do a lot of things, and had to really learn that lesson of overcommitting, right? I think that that's an important lesson for young professionals. We say yes to a lot of things, and then we're exhausted.
Yes.
But it was a good learning process, and finding those opportunities and building that community.
Wonderful. So, man, you know, your journey, this is why I remember the first time I met you, and we were talking about what you do, and you were talking about executive presence, you were talking about communication. You really impressed me that day, since that day. And so I had it on you were one of the person on the list that I were potential guests that I've been thinking about for a while. And I'm so glad today that you were here. So before we go into talking about executive presence, which is something that I think you are great at, tell me, what does the director of strategic partnerships do on a regular basis or on a daily basis?
So I would say that my job is to understand the community, and the community isn't the community of Grand Forks, where UND is located. It's not the community of the Red River Valley region. It's not the community of the state. It's all of those, and it's the community of people who work in a certain industry and work with one another on a regular basis. It's the community of people who work at the federal level. It's understanding that different populations of people work together differently. And when you walk into that space with them, listening to them and asking questions and learning and understanding what their struggles are, what their needs are. It's a lot of putting myself into situations where I have no idea who I'm walking in to talk to, and really being willing to listen to help build the relationships that are going to give the students of the University of North Dakota opportunities that they wouldn't get if I didn't build that relationship. The opportunities for mentorship, for jobs, for research projects that they maybe aren't qualified for, which makes me think of my time going into nonprofit, not being qualified and being allowed to try. And really giving students those spaces and those opportunities, but also being the presence at the University of North Dakota for the state where we can help grow professional networks for everyone, whether you're still a student or you're in the workplace. Because when we attract new business, when we attract new talent to the area, it makes all of our community better. So it's walking in over and over again to conversations, and those might be planned community events. You'll probably see me at a community event at some point, and hopefully come and say hi. But it's also, going in and understanding who the partners are, and making intentional meetings with them and spending time to build the relationships.
Wonderful. I really like that. I really like that. So before we go into the next part of the conversation, I have a message for the Professional Lunch audience. We are in the process of changing the name Professional Lunch to Professional Lounge. And we're going to be focusing on creating opportunities for young professionals to have mentors. And this year, we are part of Giving Hearts Day. And so if you have not been a friend of Professional Lunch, I invite you to do so and support us during this month. Early giving start next Monday. And so I will be putting out some reminders and some flyers and some posts just to help you remember to support Professional Lunch this year for Giving Hearts Day. And we thank you in advance for your support. Now, we're going to be talking about executive presence. Cortnee, how do you define executive presence, and why is it crucial for young professionals?
Well, I think executive presence is less about a certain set of ways you look, and it's more about the way you act or react. I think about executive presence being more about walking into a space and allowing the people around you to share about themselves first, listening, asking questions, being genuinely interested in the things the other person has to say, but also in that person's success. Does that mean taking their worries on for yourself? Not necessarily, but it's the willingness to listen and ask questions. And I would say that it's walking into a space prepared and not being a distraction to the other people that you're interacting with. And so that's where some of the physical things come in. It's not about what you wear or don't wear. It's about what you wear or don't wear, and does it distract from the conversation. It's learning how to keep the conversation on what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. And so I think that for me, it's people who are dressed nicely, but not in a way that's intentionally trying to pull attention away from the conversation, right? It's things like that. And it's also a willingness to listen beyond your own discomfort. We're humans, we're going to react. We hear something, you say something, and it's taking a breath and recognizing that you might need to listen longer to the conversation to understand where the person is coming from. So it's a self-control to be able to let the conversation continue. And so I think that's a lot of it. Also, trying your best to come in and give your full attention to the conversation you're in when you're in it is a big part of it for me.
Wow, man, this is deep. If I'm understanding, a big part of executive presence skill, your executive presence skills, is based on your ability to listen to others and be present in the moment. Is that kind of close to what you were saying?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it's my ability. I would say, well, I would say like any of us, right? I'm a work in progress.
Your doesn't mean exactly your ability,
yes,
but the ability.
You general.
Yes, exactly.
Not you specific,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But it is the learning to master yourself and your own insecurities. We all walk into rooms at different points and feel insecure about what we're wearing, about what we might say, if we say something stupid, if we all have those insecurities, we're humans, but it's mastering those and recognizing it's generally not about us when we walk into a room. The other person, it's about them. And when you put the focus on that person and listen to them and respect them and respect their time, they're not thinking about your insecurities. And so it's a struggle for all of us to put a stop on that, I think. And that's my opinion. It's something I work on every day. I would also say, though, that it's about respecting not just the other person's time and needs, but your own. Knowing, hey, I have all these things going on today. We have a 1-hour meeting. I'm going to really honor that 1 hour, not just for their time, but for my own. And really paying a little bit of attention to time in that meeting so that you're not going over, so that you're not overstepping. It's the awareness of your situation, the awareness of the people around you, and the respect for those things that I think are really valuable and what I admire in other people and want to be myself.
Wonderful. You say something about the insecurities. I remember a while back, I think 5-6 years ago, I used to struggle a lot with the fact that I don't know how native English speakers will react to my accent, and so I would be nervous when I'm going to a meeting. It took me a while to work on that, to pat myself on the back a little bit, to say, Rico, I think you're being too hard on yourself. You are able to speak a couple languages, and so you should use that as a skill, not as a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And so work on what you need to work on, and don't worry about what you don't know you should work on yet, but do your best every day. And so when you mention insecurities going to a meeting, that used to be one of the things that I used to struggle with the most. And it's getting a little better.
Well, and I want to say I'm proud of you for taking that on and recognizing, because without the diversity in the community, without people like you coming into our community, there are all kinds of things that we never get to experience. And what you bring and your experience is represented in some ways by your accent, because your accent is a representation of where you came from before, and a different set of perspectives you bring, and a different set of potentially solutions that you can bring because you maybe think differently.
Yep.
And so I love that you brought that up. I had a wonderful, very humbling conversation several years ago with a young woman who had wanted to be mentored, and we had met, and she was really challenged by meeting with me on time. And she wasn't showing up, and and she'd get late, and we would start the conversation, and she would be distracted. And I was getting upset. And I finally sat down and said, if we're going to continue to meet, you need to respect my time.
Yeah.
And she sat down and told me her story. She took 3 buses to get to meet with me.
Oh.
She was working on studying for her next step of her professional career at the same time, and she had 2 small children at home.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was just a really wonderful, humbling moment for me. It wasn't wrong for me to talk with her about it. Absolutely not. But I have since then really realized that I need to approach things more gently, because you don't know what someone else is dealing with.
Yeah.
And she was trying to be helpful to me by meeting me at the place that I just randomly suggested.
Yeah.
And I didn't think too much about it because I have a car.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed to have a lot of material capacity and wealth. And it didn't even occur to me that that might be a barrier.
Yeah.
And so we switched the location, we switched some times, and it was wonderful. And I learned so much from her.
Oh my goodness, this is a wonderful story, great story. So when you think about it, so what are some of the practical ways that young professionals can kind of begin to develop their executive presence early in their careers? Because you mentioned timing is a good thing. Time management, it's a very good skill to have, but we both can agree that it takes time to work on that and make it something. So
well, and I don't think time management is necessarily something that some of us ever fully grasp or ever fully achieve.
yeah.
It's kind of a moving target for a lot of people, I think. But to your point, everyone is different, and so I could give you a list of things that I work on, and they may not be trouble for you. They may be things that are easy for you. And so one of the biggest things I can tell people is to spend time to understand yourself. What do you struggle with? Are you someone that struggles to get out the door on a regular basis to get to class? You're going to struggle in your professional career to get to your next meetings on time. It's going to probably be a lifelong struggle. Does that make you bad? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it does mean it becomes your responsibility to learn how to deal with it. Is it setting alarms? Is it making sure you have enough time between meetings? Or are you motivated by the adrenaline rush of needing to be somewhere? And do you need your things back to back to back because you're actually more successful that way? So I think one of the big things is to spend some time to figure out and really be honest with yourself about where you struggle. Doesn't mean you have to broadcast that to everyone. Doesn't mean it gets written into your resume necessarily. But it's knowing yourself. I think the second thing is to be willing to get out of your comfort zone and approach someone who is a professional and ask them out for a cup of coffee and ask them, hey, I don't need a whole mentorship with you necessarily. I'd love it, but would you be willing to give me 1 hour of your time? Or if you are not comfortable with that, going through your school and talking to a counselor or someone at the college to say, hey, I struggle with mentorships and finding those. I'm not very outgoing, but I really do want to develop. Use the people around you, even if they're not the person you need. Use the people around you who are willing to help to get you to someone that can help give you those mentorship experiences. Hopefully, eventually, maybe there's going to be a platform locally that might eventually help connect mentors and mentees.
I think I see what you did there, Cortnee. Yes. So this is exactly what we're trying to do, because for the last 4 years, doing professional lunch, we did, for 2 years, we have professional lunch at NDSU. And this is one thing I get to find out from talking to students. Some of them, they are, after 4, 5, sometimes even a little longer, they are about to graduate. They don't know what they want to do. And there's a certain disengagement, I would say, when it comes to being active in building relationship, professional relationships, I must say. And so our goal is to create that platform, that mentoring platform, so that those that are in school can connect with with people in the community. One thing I realize is a lot of 99%, okay, let's say 90% of professionals out there would love to have coffee with a student.
Mhm.
It's just the fact that the students don't ask.
Mhm.
And so, in our thinking, what we say, what if we create that opportunity for them to be able to connect with those? And this is why we are creating the mentoring the professional lunch mentoring platform, so that we can make this a reality for the students. So
And I
that
think that's wonderful.
yeah.
I really do, and I really admire that work. It's kind of like saying to a young person, "Hey, go ask that person out on a date."
Mm-hmm.
It is anxiety producing, even for outgoing people.
Yeah.
And so, asking someone who is a student, junior high, high school, college, I've given this advice to all those levels. To approach a professional seems really daunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand that. So I appreciate what you're trying to do to kind of create relationships for them with people who've already said, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
would do that. I would have lunch with a student.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Also, though, I think it's important to recognize you don't need to know what you want to be when you grow up
Mm-hmm.
to build relationships. You don't need to know. All you need to do is say to the person, you are someone that I admire. I don't know if I want to be a banker, for
Mm-hmm.
example, when
Yeah.
I finish, but I really have enjoyed interacting with you every time I come into the bank. I know this is a maybe an unusual request,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
but but also prior to that, showing up in the community, going to events, and you don't have to go and socialize with everyone. Go a few times, get comfortable. There are things in town like Startup Brew
Mm-hmm.
that is for entrepreneurs. Do you have to be an entrepreneur to go to
No.
Startup Brew? You absolutely do not.
Yeah.
It's run by Emerging Prairie, and it's a great way. There are people together who are going there with the purpose of talking to
Mm-hmm.
people. You want practice talking to people? Go to something like that and make it your goal to say hello to two people. You show up consistently to some of these things in the community, before long, you will have opportunities to get to know more people, which will help hopefully lead you to someone that gives you that sense of, wow, they're cool. I really want to spend more time with them. Or what they do is exactly what I want to do.
Yep.
It's getting that exposure to see someone do it. If you've never seen someone who's an actuary scientist before, how do you have any idea what they do and if you'd like it? I know for a fact I would not like it. It's details. I'm
Yeah.
not detail oriented. So please do not send me your taxes to do. But everybody is different, and
Yeah.
where we see ourselves is different. And the more we can expose ourselves to different types of people, the more likely we are to be able to find what's going to make us happy.
Mm-hmm.
And also remember that there's not one path, that there's not one way to happiness.
Mm-hmm.
There are skills that a lot of us have that could translate between many different things,
Yep.
as evidenced by what I do. I came into started off as a scientist, as a bench scientist at Mayo Clinic.
Yeah.
And here I am at a university years later, not doing research, but in between, I was a radio personality. I did nonprofit fundraising. I actually worked for the state of North Dakota in the Commerce Department doing economic development.
Mm.
All of those were places where my same skill set was applied in different ways.
Wonderful. Oh my goodness. The path is not a straight line. The path can take you anywhere, and eventually that will lead you to what you want to do. Oh man, I have like 10,000 follow up questions, but I don't know. So, when you think about, I'm pretty sure you have a very large network and people that you connect with. Among your network, what has been one of the skill that you wish when you were, maybe by talking to other people, what is it that you, as a success professional now, when you look back, you think, oh my goodness, there is one skill I wish when I was in college I take on, or maybe there's I wish I would do my best to network, or I wish I did my best to do that. What is it one skill that you think that would have been crucial for you to have?
I'm going to say something that's not in the vein that you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking networking and relationship building because that's my job. Because that's where I enjoy and where I lean into.
Okay.
And so instead of spending a bunch of time on things I'm not good at, I find positions for things I am good at that will help support me in the things I'm not good at.
Okay.
Right? So details aren't my number one easiest thing. And so I've been able to find positions where we can have other people who are very good at details be my counterparts. What I would say looking back is I wish two things. I wish, number one, someone had sat me down and taught me how to prepare myself for success in a day. Someone had sat me down and said, Cortnee, before you start your day, make sure you know everything that's on your calendar. Make sure you've thought about, do you owe any of those people things before you meet? Or at the end of the day, you should always review, did I owe anybody on my list anything? So I wish I would have had more professional preparation of how to manage myself, my time. It's less about the one thing I needed to know and more about teaching me how to be successful as a professional by preparing myself every day. What are best practices? How do you keep track of your list of things that you've said that you're going to do? Because part of relationships is following through. And is if you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. Well, that's a detail. Right? Yeah. That's not as easy for me. So I would have said that ability to track and follow up would have been really helpful for me. The other thing that I would say that I wish someone had spent more time with me on was the importance of written communication. I think this is really critical in our new generation, in our younger generations, and it was for me as well. I was right on the cusp of that beginning of the digital divide. I had digital opportunities when I was still in high school, but just barely. And I would say that the ability to write and communicate is getting lost. And the value of a written communication that summarizes a conversation, a written communication that follows up is so valuable. Because not only does it make the person that you just interacted with feel very heard when you send a message back to say, hey, here's what we talked about, here's what I understood. It clarifies anything. And if you misunderstood, you find out right away, we misunderstood that, and we can fix it. It also makes the person feel like you heard them and you were actually listening, and it strengthens that relationship very quickly. But then it also serves as a record for you to go back later if you forgot or you can't find that notebook or you can't remember quite what you talked about, that practice of that written communication and follow-up. And so I still to this day frequently seek opportunities to find people to mentor me. How do they respond after a meeting? How do they follow up? How do they communicate? And who do I like and how do I template against that and a template with that person? And I've used AI. I'm going to be totally honest. I've used ChatGPT. I hope all of you are using ChatGPT. I hope everybody is learning the ins and outs of AI, recognizing that it's got problems, but it can be a hugely valuable tool, and starting to create some templating for myself around how to be more effective in those follow-ups and in communication and in tracking. But I think that's a skill set that we have somewhat missing, that the text speak doesn't have the same impact in a relationship as a well-thought-out message does.
Wow. So if you could kind of summarize, how can young professionals begin to acquire that skill, begin to work on it, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to take the time to write messages in formats that their teachers in school might give them, right? So at some point you're going to be given a letter template, and it seems so formal, and it seems almost silly sometimes to have that level of formality. And to be honest, when a relationship develops enough between two people, that level of formality is unnecessary. It's superfluous. We don't need it there. But utilizing that and looking at, there's a reason that original template of, Dear Rico, here is the information that I wanted to share with you. Thank you for taking the time, right? Like there's a reason that kind of a template exists. It acknowledges the person that you're communicating with. Hey, I know you. Not just, yeah, you know that I know you because I'm sending you an email, but hey, Rico, this message is actually for you. It wasn't a mistake. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. Acknowledges the other person and time that they've put in, or thank you for being willing to communicate further about this. It just acknowledges the other person and that they are putting time into you in some way, shape, or form by this communication. And the sincerely or my best to you or that sign off at the end with your name says, nope, really, this is from me as a single person. We live in a world where we're bombarded with messages all of the time, intentional and unintentional messages. We have information coming at us all the time. Personalizing that information matters in a world where there is this much noise. We need to take the time with people. That's why I always say to people also, take the time to shake someone's hand and make eye contact. Or if that's not your culture, what is your culture of honoring and stopping with that other person to let them know, I see you, you see me. What is that way? Utilize those tools and honor people. Some people fist bump, that's great. But going back to those kinds of templates and thinking about why those templates exist. And then it's just make a habit of sending thank you notes, thank you messages, thank you emails. You don't have to paper and pen, but I have to tell you, there's nothing that tickles me more than after I've met with a student and I get a letter from them or a little card in the mail and they think they're being all like generationally sensitive by sending it to me. And I kind of want to be like, I'm not as old as you think I am. But that whole retro vintage get a letter in the mail thing is awesome. And it does amazing things for relationships. But it does take intentionality. Don't let yourself get by with sending skimpy messages. Don't let yourself send emails if you aren't going to acknowledge the person first and sign your name. Just take the time to put those details in for a while and see how the people that you interact with respond to you and see how that changes over time.
Wonderful, man. I think I'm gonna keep this for myself.
Well, again, I want to reference our earlier conversation where I said these are things I admire in other people, and these are things that I'm striving for, and these are things that people have given me advice on that I'm sharing with you. And by no means am I saying I'm perfect. You've been on the receiving or lack of receiving end from an email response from me. It's a constant struggle. Yeah, it's a constant struggle.
No, but the way you put it, it's. I think that's something that in the nonprofit world that donors, people who are friends, truly admire when you send a handwritten note, just to think about them. Not just when they give you something, but when you send them a note saying thank you for this or that, thank you for being a sponsor or donor or some sort like that. But on the professional side, I can see how, sometimes you might send a letter that has all the formalities and then you don't get an answer. One thing I struggled with again is if you send a letter to somebody that they don't answer, sometimes right away you might feel a little different, oh my goodness, I take my time writing this letter, but then again, no answer. And then, this is the kicker, when you later found out, when they see you at an event, oh, Rico, I really like this email that you sent me. But they didn't answer right away. But they did appreciate the letter.
And actually, what you just said brings up a good point. There is definitely such a thing as too formal. There is definitely such a thing as hiding behind formality. And like everything, everything's a balance. The personal touch matters, taking the time to let someone know you see them. So am I advocating do all of your communication through the mail in formal letters? I am absolutely not. What I am advocating is when you do communicate with someone, taking the time to not just send a 2-word text message. if you're going to send a text message, your relationship with that person may be completely reasonable for a text message to be how you communicate, right? But taking the time to write a full sentence, making sure stuff is spelled right,
Yeah.
right? And not using a lot of lingo and K and it's a balance. Every relationship is different. I send my boss single line text messages all the time because our relationship is built to that point where that's actually the most respectful mode of communication for them. And that's another thing that I'm learning is I'm learning to try and ask people, how do you want to be communicated with? Would you like me to email you? Do you prefer a text? Because for me, I prefer a text message because my inbox of email with all of the professional networks I'm involved with gets full. It's lots and lots to dig through, right? Whereas a text message pings me because I can't have it ping me when an email comes through or my phone would be constantly going off. Text message pings me and it keeps it top of mind. But everybody has different preferences and asking someone, especially someone you'd like to have mentor you, how would you prefer I communicate with you? Do you want me to email you, text you, call you? What's your preference? And if I don't get a hold of you, should I just wait till you get back to me or would you prefer a reminder? For me, I'll tell you, and I've told you this, Rico, remind me.
Exactly.
If I don't respond in a week and you're waiting for an answer, please remind me. And so just talking with people about what their professional preferences are on communication is really valuable.
Wow, man, this is so good. This is when I'm having conversation with professionals, and I've been doing this for a while. And one thing I realize sometimes there are conversations that you have that really, really make you think about how you have been. What are some of the things that you can work on to make your journey, your professional journey, better? And a few things that you mentioned here today really get me to think about some of the professional relationships that I have and how I can work to make them better. Like asking the professional, how do you want to be communicated with? Is it text? Is it email? So that's a very crucial piece of information that young professionals need to know. And not just young professionals, me too. I need to know that. And people might say, Rico, you have a very nice network, but this is not just a refresher, but it's something that that is going to be ingrained in my brain now to know to ask for that, right? Because it's important. So let's I know time is running so fast right now. You don't see time when you're having fun, but it's important to continue with the conversation. So what tips do you have for navigating that you can tell young professionals for navigating difficult conversation, especially in the workplace or maybe with their professor or maybe with the contact with their network or some sort?
That is something that I don't think anyone ever fully masters. Difficult conversations are difficult for a reason. Usually they're difficult because emotions are involved.
Yeah.
And it is very, very, very hard to have a conversation about something emotional when you're also emotional. It is something that I revisit frequently, the idea of crucial conversations and how to have those. I've been through several different trainings. I know lots of people who do trainings on these kind of crucial conversations. I think you've had a conversation with Jody Bach, and I believe that Jody does some of those. And Jody, if I'm misspeaking, I'm sorry, but hopefully you can refer people to someone else who does it. But I do think you do. But it's something that I have to revisit over and over again. What I've learned for myself is that I need to write myself out exactly what my goal is for the conversation before I start it. If I don't know what my goal is, I don't have the conversation, number one. So my goal in this is to let that person know that they disappointed me by not doing something I needed done. Okay? If that's my goal, that's my goal. But is that a goal in and of itself, just to let them know that they disappointed me? No. It's because I don't want it to happen again in the future. So my actual goal is to not have this happen again in the future. So if that's my goal, the best way for me to achieve that goal is not to make them defensive or to feel blamed or to feel my anger and disappointment. It's to say, hey, you're human. I'm human. We disappoint each other. Can you tell me what happened? that this didn't get done.
Mm-hmm.
It's thinking about what your ultimate goal is. Unfortunately, for me, I have these moments of I need to be proven right. See, I told you this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
See, I knew this was going to go wrong. I knew if you didn't follow these rules, right? We have that, and that's human nature.
Yep.
It's human nature. If I have to follow the rules, Rico, you should have to follow them, and I'm mad that you didn't follow them, and I want you to have consequences. Well, no, I don't actually want you to have consequences, but in that moment, that's how I feel. So I would say, for me, it's telling myself and really figuring out before I go into the conversation, what do I want to get out of it? What am I looking for? And then thinking about what's the best way to get there and what do I need from them going forward in order to repair the relationship or prevent something from happening again. And then I wait to have that conversation until I feel like I'm calm enough to have it without getting emotional about it. If I'm feeling disappointed by that person, I need to find a different outlet to talk to someone about that first and work through those emotions. I still will tell them, hey, you disappointed me. Really, really frustrated because you disappointed me and I was really depending on you. But they're not going to be my outlet in that moment if I want an outcome of my goal. So it's really trying to do the best that we can to remove emotion, plan for the conversation, and recognize that even if you come in with your plan for the conversation and you come in cool-headed, they may not. And just like you, we've all had moments where we're reactive when someone approaches us with something we don't know is coming and we get defensive. They're having that same thing. And reminding myself, next time I'm defensive like that, how would I like the other person to be reacting to me? Because most of the time, these critical conversations happen with people that you have to be in relationship with for a long time. So trying to be the one to say, I'm going to set the maturity level here, and hopefully I'll get that respect, and they'll work and try to continue to move towards a less defensive, more productive, solutions-based approach to conflict.
Wow, this is I think young professionals, this is a podcast you should watch. You should at least you should listen to, because that is crucial. We all have moments where, in the moment, we don't see how bad it is, based on the way we react to certain things. But later we look at, because we're reacting under emotions, and later we realize that, man, we should have taken a moment to cool off, or at least think this through before we go through that.
And emotions aren't wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Emotions aren't wrong. They just are what they are.
Yeah.
And when people try to not acknowledge their emotions, that has all sorts of consequences as well.
Yeah.
That's when workplaces get very passive aggressive, when people don't feel like they can say how they really feel. That's why it's important you communicate how you feel, but you wait to do it until the emotional surge has passed. Don't send an email as soon as someone says something to disappoint you in the moment when you're angry,
Yeah.
because the way you say it's going to come out very differently than if you take a few minutes and you process it, or a few days sometimes to say, and then say in your email, acknowledge, or in the conversation, look, I needed to take a few days to calm down. That is something that one of my mentors taught me. She said, you are never hostage in a situation. If someone approaches you and they're angry and they're confrontational and you don't think you can handle it, you have the power to say, I'm sorry. I can see that you're upset. I'm not going to react well to this right now. Can I please take a step back? I promise you I will come back to you and we will work this out. But I need to step away. Sometimes that step away, it's something critical and you have to solve a problem in an hour and you only can take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So take that 5 minutes. Give yourself, step back, take a breath before you engage that conversation. Sometimes it is, I need a couple days to think about this so that I give you my best, most respectful answer. I will get back to you. It's one of the best pieces of advice someone has ever given me.
Oh man, this is good. And now you are giving it to me, and possibly hundreds, maybe thousands of people.
And I'll probably send her an email and tell her that, hey, I shared your advice.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, you were just talking about the workplace, and I have a few questions about it, but I know time is not on our side today. We have quite a bit left here to cover, but we're gonna have to stop, cut it short. Two questions. What can young professionals do to really express or maybe effectively communicate with people that are in higher position, like your boss. You mentioned you have a good relationship with your boss. What else? Is there some other boundaries that they can start early in their career just to establish those way of communicating? I mean, I don't know if I'm asking the question right, but you were talking about that earlier, so I waited before I asked the follow-up question.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, so I'm please clarify if I don't answer what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
But number one, walking into a relationship with someone above you, one of the things I will always say is respect their time.
Mm-hmm.
One thing about the position above you is you don't know their position or their role.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what other things they have outside of what's just on their calendar, right? So they may have a really busy calendar, but they also might have 14 reports that they need to get in, 6 people that they're supposed to do reviews for that day, decisions that need to be made for a strategic plan that isn't time that's been penciled out in their day specifically. Just a calendar does not tell you what that role is like and what that mental load is like,
Mm-hmm.
thinking all the time about and taking responsibility for so many things. And so starting off with the respectful, I recognize that your role is stressful or that you're busy or something that says, I recognize that you have a lot and I appreciate you. I do have a request of you, of your time, and here's what it is. And being respectful and keeping your communication short. Writing the person above you 16 pages of information. I'm going to tell you right now, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into that, and it's a piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have time to read it. And it's not because they don't like you. It's not because they don't want to respect you. It's because their day doesn't allow for it. So if you're going to give a lot of information, do a upfront, here is the one sentence overview of what you need to know. Below is a description of a company that I would like to pursue a relationship with that is this kind of company. Look at it at your leisure, or if you trust me, I'll just go ahead and go forward. Right? Give them a small version, a snapshot, if you have to put lots of information in. If you're sending someone above you and you have critical dates, bold the dates or put them in a different color. If you're sending an email to your supervisor and you need them to look at something quickly, don't hesitate to put action requested in your email.
Mm-hmm.
Something else really important about communicating with people above you is it's always safest to assume that communication with someone above you is an email. Email is currently the accepted way that we communicate in the business world. It's an accepted way unless you've had the conversation where you've said, how do you like to be communicated with? If they give you that permission, I don't care if you have their cell phone number or not. If you've never asked for permission, use email. Use that as your mode of communication until you know differently.
Wonderful. Oh my goodness. Um, can can you share an example of a strategic partnership that has a significant impact on your work or your career?
Well, that's a hard question to answer because there's so many of them.
Okay, give me one.
So
The
I
best.
will. Well, there's not a best one. I can't. Don't do that to me.
Okay.
So one of the ones I'm going to use is a local company,
Mhm.
Packet Digital,
Okay.
and the CEO of Packet Digital is Terry Zimmerman,
Mhm.
and she is someone I really look up to. Female business owner, has made fabulous decisions, understands the tech industry, and has done a lot to grow the technical capacity of our state.
Mhm.
And also to grow the way people perceive our state, right? And that relationship is important to me because Terry's company provides services, several different things that they do that provide services that support work that UND is doing in our research. She does research with us and also with NDSU and supports those research institutions by using us to help make her products better. She shows up at things in the community that teach people. She is a mentor. She speaks when she's asked to come and speak to things. She goes and advocates for her industry, for our universities, for people in business in general, to our legislature in the state. communicates with our national congressional delegations. She is someone that sees the value of integration, collaboration, communication, and commitment. I did not mean for all those words to sound so alliterative. That's just how it came out. Don't ask me to repeat them or I will absolutely fail. But she's an example of a partner that it's not just about what she's doing for UND where I work. It's about what she's doing for the state. It's about her commitment to the success of the people around her. And it's about building something that we're all proud of. And so I think that that's a relationship that shows it's a very strategic relationship because there's so much value in so many different areas. Because for any one thing to succeed, you have to have success and support and collaboration in all sorts of areas. It's not, hey, I want my technology to succeed, so I need relationships with technologies or technology companies. You need relationships with the other people developing them, the funders that are going to give money to develop that thing, the community members that are going to choose to use that technology once it gets into the marketplace. It's very complicated, and she does just a great job of treating people with respect and growing in a lot of directions. So that's the example that I would give.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I promise this is my last question for the interview. So, we talk about quite a few things today here that gonna help young professionals. That gonna help me too because I get to learn a lot from people like you who have who learn some of the best way to do things and be willing to come on professional lunch and share with the professional lunch audience. And so this is the last question. So what would you tell that young professional in college right now who's about to start their journey, launch their careers? What one piece of advice that you would give them, or two pieces of advice?
I'll go back to what I said earlier. Know yourself. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses. Don't be afraid of your weaknesses. Don't be insecure about them, but know what they are and take responsibility for them. That comes across for those of us who hire young people very, very clearly. And part of that is not being afraid to be wrong. Take responsibility when you're wrong. Hey, I made a mistake. I didn't realize that I needed to click this instead of this, and I know it caused a bunch of problems. How can I help make it better? Not passing blame, not making excuses goes a long ways in both building relationships with good mentors and building relationships with your own supervisors and showing up in the market in a way that makes you very desirable and hireable.
This is a question that I ask often on professional lunch. And I think that the answer you give is at the root of it all. Because when you know yourself, you will develop the ability to build relationships. When you know your strengths, your weaknesses, all of this kind of really fall back into, people that saying, oh, work hard. If you know yourself, right, that kind of help you work towards what you want to do, right? Relationships. Build relationships. Some of the advice that they give, ask for help. If you know yourself, then you can ask for help. It falls at the root of every advice that I get to receive on professional lunch, and also advice that I get to share with others, which is, know yourself, know your weaknesses, know your strength. And when you make a mistake, hey, we are human. We're bound to make mistakes, right? And so that was really good. So this is professional lunch, and today we had Cortnee Jensen, the executive director for strategic partnership for the University of North Dakota, here to help young professionals with their careers. So, Cortnee, thank you so much for being on Professional Lunch today. Any last words for the Professional Lunch audience?
Well, if you're listening to this, you're making good strides and you're taking good steps towards a future career. So thank you, Rico, for bringing this to our students and to our workforce because we need to continue to develop and learn from each other.
Wonderful. Oh my goodness. This is the right word. This is the right spot to end the conversation because I want to remember that myself. All right. So now I want to remind you, if you are listening to this conversation today, this conversation was brought to you by the Philstone Group. We thank them for their support to bring a great guest like Cortnee here for conversation that can help you launch your career. Again, we are part of Giving Hearts Day this year, and on the Giving Hearts Day website, you will see that it's professional launch. So the name now, we're about to change the name from professional launch to professional launch. So if you see that, this is still us. It will just, in the process. And starting Monday, you will start seeing more flyers, more videos that talk about professional launch as we are building a mentoring platform for young professionals to be able to learn from those who have succeeded in their career path and be able to learn from them. So we thank you for your support. We thank you for being a friend of Professional Lunch. And if you have an idea for a guest, we want to hear. We want your suggestions. If you know someone who will be a great guest for the podcast, you just mention it to me. DM me on LinkedIn or Facebook. Send me a message, and we will talk to them and see if we can have them on the Professional Lunch podcast. We thank you for your support. Now, this is the time that I tell you, it's up to you to make today a great day. Have a great day. Cortnee, thank you so much for being here today. All right. My goodness. Cortnee, we should have more than one conversation. That was great. I mean, you really have